Welcome to the Filthy Mitts Podcast.
Everybody keeps talking about trading Auston Matthews, and for good reason. He only has 2 years left on his contract. So if this time next year Matthews refuses to extend, then you have no choice. You got to trade him. You're not going to risk losing him for nothing. But assuming he does extend, then in my opinion, you'd be an absolute fool for trading him. In fact, I think if Toronto is going to trade anyone, it should be William Nylander. And before Leafs fans lose their minds on me, hear me out, people, all right? This is not me saying that Nylander isn't an unbelievable player, because he is. He's an elite skater, all right? He's dynamic. The dude can absolutely take over games. But being super loaded on offense hasn't exactly gotten Toronto very far. So maybe trading one of these guys is the answer. Now, if you move Auston Matthews, you'll get a king's ransom. But what happens down the middle? Seriously, what are you going to do down the middle? You got John Tavares and you got Auston Matthews. Tavares is aging. Matthews is your franchise center. And elite centers are almost impossible to replace, you guys. You don't just wake up one day and find another Auston Matthews. All right? These guys don't exist. And this is where I think people are missing the bigger picture. Centers drive playoff hockey. All right? Between the defensive responsibility, the face-offs, the transition plays, franchise centers are the backbone of championship teams. Now, don't get me wrong, wingers are incredibly valuable too. But elite centers are the foundation. So if Toronto decides we need to change this roster, why would you move the franchise center instead of the elite winger? It doesn't make any sense. And honestly, Toronto winning the lottery makes this conversation a hell of a lot more interesting. All right, because now you potentially have Gavin McKenna coming. You got a young, dynamic winger with superstar upside. Suddenly, you have a possible long-term replacement on the wing. Not for Matthews, for Nylander. And here's why I think Nylander might actually make more sense. First off, his value around the league would also be massive. All right, teams would line up for a player like this. The return would be enormous. And what does Toronto really need? They need defense. They need goaltending, you guys. They need all-around depth, to be honest. So maybe the smartest thing they could do is turn a luxury position like winger into roster balance. Maybe they could bring in that franchise goalie or that Norris caliber defenseman. Now, don't get me wrong. You could do the same thing with Matthews, but then you create a huge hole down the middle. And now you're desperate for a number one center. Good luck finding one of those, by the way. So if you're Toronto, you're better off moving Nylander. You really are. Not to mention the main reason that they lack depth in goaltending in the first place is because they were so top heavy with the core four. If you trade Nylander, you can spread that cap hit into other areas of the team. And I know Marner's gone and McKenna's going to be on an ELC, so money isn't a problem like it was before. You know, hey, maybe they can fix the D in the goaltending in free agency. But I got to tell you, free agency isn't what it used to be, you guys. All right, most impact players don't even make it to free agency. So if that doesn't work, you have to find other ways to balance out your roster. Now, obviously, there's risk to trading Nylander too. Okay, he's still one of the most dangerous players in hockey. If you trade him, then you better hope McKenna becomes a star. Because if he doesn't, Toronto could end up regretting the hell out of this move. I understand that. But that's what makes this fascinating, you guys. All right, because I genuinely think Toronto is approaching one of the biggest decisions in franchise history. Do you keep loading up on offensive firepower, or do you finally rebalance this roster and build a more complete hockey team? Now, more than likely, any decision like this wouldn't be made until after next season, which means we should get to see what this new core four can do. But if Toronto decides they need a major shakeup, who are you moving? Are you moving Auston Matthews, or are you moving William Nylander? And which move actually gives the Leafs a better chance to win a Stanley Cup? Let me know in the comments, you guys. If you like this type of hockey content, give us a follow. There's plenty more coming. This is the Filthy Mitts Podcast. I'm out.